when skiffle music, I don't know if you remember that. It came on the scene, and just ahead of rock and roll for us in the mid '50s. And I was about 12 years old, and I heard of this guy Lonnie Donegan, and I sprang up off the. It was almost like I'd been laying in dormancy, waiting for this moment to. And I started singing. By the end of the record, I was singing along with it. And then I went out and, persuaded my dad to buy me a record player. And rock and roll, Little Richard, Chuck Berry was all hitting us at that time. So it was just like a natural kind of progression. Well, it took me quite a long time to develop a distinctive voice. When I listen to myself now, there was a couple of recordings of when I was 16, and I was just, I knew I had some talent, but I really didn't push it very far, to the edges. I mean, like the keys, I used to sing in real comfortable keys, and, so it took quite a while for like working in the pubs and the bars to get myself, to develop my own thing. The odd thing when you used to buy those early blues, rock and roll records, you'd flip them over and there'd always be a blues on the other side, And I remember I got this Ray Charles song called I'm Moving On that was, it wasn't one of his big hits. But on the B-side, when I flipped it over, it was I Believe to My Soul, which was like, I was blown away by it because it was the blues, but he'd added that gospel thing. And just, what I didn't realize at the time was his junkie that's in there too. But there was something about Ray. I dropped tools. I dropped everything. I just studied him, inside out. He was just, because I started off and had such success with a little help from my friends, that was completely different. The arrangement was so different from Ringo's, original. But not everything I do is that far removed from the original demo, Once in a while it's more down to just getting a good key that suits my voice. And I've always been lucky to work around good players. And they kind of have a knack of knowing that if I'm going to do something different with it, that, they can take it somewhere different as well. I don't have that. When I think back, I mean, artists by my age, you would imagine I would have done 40 albums or so. I really don't have that many. I haven't had that many albums out, and so it's like I'm not sure how to put it in tie with the great musicians who've been around me. But I mean, I guess the voice is an instrument as well. You know what I mean? I mean, the singing voice it's not a guitar, but it is an instrument, and so there's a kind of level of that we work on that, you've got to be in a certain frame of mind, I think, to kind of play blues or R&B like ours that's lasted the full course of time. Maybe I'm amazed. There's an odd little story there that, because a friend of mine at one of the record labels sent a message to McCartney saying, "Joe's just done, maybe I'm amazed, and could you think of something to do?" We wanted him to put a bit of vocal on it, and but I don't think he was too thrilled with the idea. And I got this message saying he'd be telephoning me between 9 and 12 o'clock one day. So I'm sat there behind you can imagine me, even now, he's a Beatle, Sir Paul. So I sat waiting by that telephone for 3 hours. And finally the phone rang, and I'm sort of shaking a bit, and I pick up the phone, and it was the cleaning lady saying she wouldn't be in today. I never did hear from him, so we'll never know what contribution he could have put on that. Well, when I first recorded with a little help from my friends, the Beatles were like gods in England. I mean, in 1968, they literally were. So I got this invite to go down to Apple and meet Paul and George one afternoon. And they both, I mean, I can see it like it was yesterday. Paul just sat at this upright piano and played me Golden Slumbers. And then he played Bathroom Window and said, "You can keep that one if you like." And, then George played me Something in the Way She Moves, which blew me away in the sheer simplicity of it. The chords are very open and just very, but, what a lovely song. I'd already recorded a song called Bye Bye Blackbird, which was an old standard. And I loved Ray Charles when he used to do those slow 3/4, gospel-influenced songs. So I was really following through on what Ray did, because he did that with a lot of other songs too. So it was just like trying the Ray approach, with the girl choir, replying. And but in the age we were living in, we were just coming into a bit the psychedelic era, So we got like Jimmy Page, who would add the guitar, which gave it a whole different slant. It really, everyone who contributed put in stuff that just kind of made it very special. The song One, I was thinking it came from the 80s, but it must have just come in the early 90s. Uh, it was actually suggested to me. I think it came from the German record label, who was wondering if I would, could go into some deeper water than I usually do, And I remember I sat and looked at it, the title was written out, and I looked at it for, a whole day, going, I don't know if I could really do this song justice or do it, the way I should. But then when we tried it, I got a good feeling from it that it was, because it's a great song. It doesn't repeat itself. It's a very unusual tune. Well, the song "Jealous Guy," I had a version of it by Donny Hathaway, the black soul singer from the 70s, and he did a great Donny Hathaway live, and so my treatment was somewhere between there. You'll notice it's kind of, I wouldn't say tongue-in-cheek, but I treat it pretty light-heartedly. So we kind of did it somewhere between R&B and like a barrel, the barrel house kind of blues. Pub, almost like one of those pub sing-alongs to some degree. People have been trying to tempt me into using those little earpieces, you see everyone wear, where they look like those little pink things hanging out of their ears. And I keep resisting it because I love that contact, that you get. It's a vibe that you feel from the crowd that does inspire you to sort of, deliver more. It's just one of those things. It's rock and roll, If you hit the spot, it kind of, it bounces backwards and forwards. Mad Dog's an Englishman. It took its toll on me by the end, but when we started off, I remember some of those nights, the energy on stage was absolutely, amazing. It was like a freight train coming down the track. And, I honestly believe that the recording, we had some nights that were far superior to the album that came out in the end. But it took its toll on me. I ended up in a heap at the end. Well, my singing style, as I say, I started off really as a blues singer who goes on to these forays of singing pop or into different, excursions in that area. So I've never really been comfortable with songs that are too pop. But it's, I don't know, I try and put feeling into what I do. Because, I think that's what people expect from me, I've never kind of sort of just sang songs, half-heartedly. I have to get into them pretty deep. Well, Dave, I've been touring across the States, and we were in Florida, and we did 2 shows together. And I brought him out, and we did Feeling All Right. You can imagine the audience, so that was pretty far out. Because we've both got beer bellies now, and we're both bald-headed. And he came on, and I thought we were going to have the clash of the beer bellies. He was bashing into me with his stomach. Huge fan of Traffic. To me, they were, again, back to 68, they were like the underground band, when they were just a 3-piece with Jim Capaldi, who just died, of course, sad. But Steve used to play the organ with the foot pedals. And I remember the band when Dave was in, too. That was pretty great, Yeah, the song Feeling All Right, I just heard myself singing it. And I came over to the States with Denny Cordell, again, a dead producer, a guy who died a while back, great producer. And, Denny put me he got me a bunch of session players at the time. Paul Humphreys, a great drummer. There was Carol Kay on bass, session girl, amazing. All these people, Artie Butler, who did all these commercials. And we just rattled it off in like 3 takes. They heard the demo and came up with the piano. Artie came up with the piano. So it was, I thought, well, God, if making rock and roll records was always this easy, it'd be great. But well, I was watching the 5 years best of Saturday Night Live, and I was flattered that they showed the segment of John Belushi doing With a Little Help, because it was a pretty cutting, version he did of it. I went on there a couple of years later, and we did a duet on Feeling All Right. And one of the comical things that day was I had a bit of a sore throat. I went to a voice specialist, and he followed me around to the place, to see what was going on. And because the guy put like the lollipop stick in my tongue, and he was peering down my throat, having a look. I Who Have Nothing, Benny King. I thought Jeff Beck did a wonderful solo on there. What I love about there aren't that many guys who've got that thing where Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck have in common, is where they can take a melody but still play blues inside the melody, And I think that's why that song resonates with me. Yeah, again, when you're a singer, when you're young, when you're just learning in your teens, certain songs or certain artists just put stuff inside you that you're not quite aware of till many years later, that in developing a style. And even though, you never sing quite like them. I mean, I never really sing the phrasing of Nina Simone, but I had a couple of her albums that really, meant a lot to how I developed. Well, what's going on? I mean, I knew I was in dangerous waters. When I'm over in Europe, the French always give me a bit of a hard time. Joe, you always do so many covers. Why? What is with these covers? Marvin Gaye, what's going on? How can you possibly cover that? I said, well, I have. I mean, it might be indulgence or self-indulgence, but I mean, I love Marvin as much as anybody did. I thought he was, the greatest. I mean, he was a genius too. But I just, whether it's taking liberties or not, I certain songs I just try and give them my own interpretation, and where I am in the time period of right now. Well, growing up in Sheffield, it always seemed a little odd that we never, that there were quite a few bands in our town, and not many. A guy called Dave Berry was like the top singer, and but nobody was really writing. When you think in Liverpool, most of the bands by the mid-'60s were all writing their own stuff. It never really occurred to us. We all kind of were covering Chuck Berry and and then we got into the blues, the Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker, but there were very few people. I don't think anybody wrote their own material, but because I think with the fact that it was a steel town, and then you got up to Newcastle where Eric Burdon and the Animals came from, our leanings were more R&B than the guys, from Liverpool and London, until the Stones disproved that. Again, Leon Russell on that, I got to hand him his due. On two of those songs, he just walked up to me, I said, Joe, what do you think of this? And boink, doink, doink, hammered out that riff, and I just said, I was sold on it instantly, Yeah, and the same with Cry Me a River, the old Julie London song. He came up with that arrangement too, so, he just played me that riff, and I thought, because I never really thought of it. If it was a pop song, it was a good one. Well, he's the producer, C.J. Vanston on Heart and Soul, and he really gave me his heart and soul. He stayed with this album. We kicked off like October the year before that last, and we hadn't finished with it by May the following year, and so he stayed the course with it, really. And the last few albums, I've done there's this thing called comping, where they like you to do about 20 vocals, and then they can take the best licks. But I kind of was glad we were leaning away from that. And when you think of a singer like me, you're looking for sort of natural emotion. If you do all that splicing, you lose all that. So with CJ, I mean, we sort of made a little pact that we'd use, like full vocals if we could. And what I've noticed over the years is that usually when I come in the studio, the first like 2 or 3 vocals are the ones that, we always end up using. I mean, there's just something about that, when your mind's still in the creative process. Yeah, once you've got it locked in, then you tend to just get a bit repetitive. But those early ones, even though they might be a bit off melody, and usually I'm in a better tone of voice the first few takes too. I think if I was coming on the scene today, I don't even know if I want to be a rock singer. You know, the kind of pressure is more to be a star, isn't it? As much as having talent. You know, the grooming. I mean, they always hated me years ago because they couldn't groom me at all. I mean, you know, I just wasn't that type of guy for all that, being a Sheffielder, you know. But it's something I wonder about with all this American Idol stuff, you know. I mean, when you were saying that a lot of artists don't get past 2 albums, or they're lucky to get to 2 albums, it's but I think that, you know, the record companies are to blame to some degree in the way that they, you know, we've always been a bit of a commodity. You know, I mean, when I was told that, you know, years ago by Chris Blackwell, when he said, you know, you're going to become a box of cornflakes, don't you? And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? You know, but it's true that we do become a kind of commodity, and if there's no demand, boom, onto, you know. But it's gotten a bit worse, I think, because you know, in the late '60s, it was almost like we kind of thought we were going into a new time where, you know, we'd do tracks. I mean, look at Bob Dylan when he did Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. It took up a whole side of an album, you know. You know, you wouldn't dream of doing that. You know, nobody would want to give you the patience of, you know, studio time, I guess. But so it's like we kind of lost something there that we put in place. You know, the freedom element kind of gone back, you know, to being controlled by the commodity element. Hitchcock Railway, I recorded at Sunset Sound, in Hollywood, and on my second album. And it was just one, you know, with the Grease Band, with Chris Stainton and Bruce Rowlands and Alan Spencer and Henry McCullough. It was one of those we probably did in about 5 takes. But, you know, it was an odd little song. I'd heard it from Jose Feliciano, like on one of his albums, and I just thought we'll give it a whirl. Yeah, Robert Palmer, I mean, what a, you know, shock for him to be. I mean, he was a big chain smoker, Robert. I know. I don't know if that contributed to his heart problem, but yeah, I mean, you know, simply irresistible. He had a connection with, you know, R&B. I remember going to he had this house in Compass Point where I recorded Sheffield Steel about 1980, and I went round his house and he would have a few drinks and he had a huge library of albums. And as he would get a little higher, he would run along, you know, the lines and just start pulling records out, and playing them like a wham bam. It was like, you know, part of his writing process. It was a very interesting guy to be around. You know, a little more sophisticated approach to R&B than mine, definitely. But you know, he left us far too soon. In 1964, when I recorded "I'll Cry Instead" and it died a death. Everyone, my father and, you know, the family were saying, well, you've had your go at show business, Joe, get back to work. And I said, I'm sorry. It's like, in part, I was too embarrassed to go back, even though they said I could go back to my job as a gasman at the East Midland Gas Board. So I bummed around and played the pubs. And it wasn't until the music scene changed, about when White Shade of Pale and Procol Harum came around. And we sent a demo to Denny Cordell in London, and then of course we had the huge hit with Little Help, and then people came knocking at the door saying, "You want to go to America?" So it was like, talk about a dream come true. It was a dream. I mean, it wasn't even a dream because I didn't think, I thought I could imagine myself doing it for a few years and then having to bottle down, you know, and get a job. So it was all a bit amazing that it turned into what it did. I guess in my career I've probably made about 24 studio albums, maybe not even that many. So like on an average, one every couple of years, and but I would say I'm very pleased with this. Alongside it, you know, records I've made in the past, I think it's the best one I've done for a few albums, and you know, because we really, it's hard to know where to who are listening to your music at my age. So it's like, I don't know, it seemed a little indulgent when I started, but again, like you say, sometimes you have to let things sit before you can really tell, what they mean. But I've been getting such good reaction from people that it's, it makes it worthwhile having been in the studio so long.